At 5:12 a.m., the sun has yet to breach the horizon, and the only light in the valley comes from a flickering oil lantern swinging gently on a hitching post. The wind cuts sharp across the frost-slicked grass, but a figure lean and steady emerges from a barn carrying two 5-gallon milk pails. He is 94 years old, wears no watch, and hasn't used electricity a single day in his life. Yet his gait is confident, legs strong, posture upright. This is Amos Lapp, a devout Old-Order Amish man from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and today, as every day, he will walk more than 6 miles before noon. What sets Amos apart isn't just his age or devotion. It's his legs, sturdy, sinewy, and unshakably grounded. He climbs hills most outsiders would avoid, balancing full buckets of milk, turning soil with a manual plow, and ascending stairs cut from uneven barn wood. He does this not in cushioned trainers, but in worn leather boots softened by decades of sweat and soil. Around him, his community echoes the same rhythm. Children walking barefoot to a schoolhouse 2 miles away, women crossing frozen fields with laundry baskets, men steering teams of draft horses through rutted lanes on foot. No cars. No bikes. No shortcuts. Here, mobility isn't an afterthought, it's a way of life. The Amish live without elevators, escalators, or remote controls. If you need to get somewhere, you walk. If something breaks, you haul it by hand. Everything in this world, from worship to work, demands movement. As a result, leg strength, the kind that fends off falls, fuels stamina, and supports aging, becomes embedded not in workouts, but in routine. Even at 94, Amos doesn't consider himself particularly fit. He sees his daily tasks, lifting feed, walking fence lines, turning compost, as duties, not exercises. But researchers outside the community are beginning to take notice. Geriatricians and physiologists have quietly begun tracking data, intrigued by the resilience of bodies like Amos's. He has no hip replacement, no walker, no history of falls. Just calloused soles, fluid joints, and a lifetime of movement rooted in necessity. The secret, it seems, may lie not in doing more, but in never stopping. Each sunrise brings another round of walking, lifting, and climbing. And for Amos, those milk pails are just the warm-up. Tomorrow, he'll be leading a hay wagon uphill, on foot. In a society untouched by fitness fads, protein powders, or gym memberships, the Old-Order Amish of Lancaster County have managed to preserve a secret many modern communities are desperate to unlock. Leg power that endures into the 9th and even 10th decade of life. There are no treadmills humming inside their barns, no kettlebells lined along the walls of their homes. Yet their elders outpace suburban retirees half their age, not by sprinting, but by sheer, daily, unrelenting use of their legs for everything life demands. Lancaster County is home to more than 35,000 Old-Order Amish, a deeply religious and agrarian community that eschews most modern conveniences. Their health outcomes have often puzzled scientists. Despite limited access to modern healthcare and an aversion to pharmaceuticals, they boast lower than average rates of obesity and cardiovascular disease. But what especially stands out, again and again in field studies and observational data, is the leg endurance of their elderly. In biomechanical terms, they retain muscular symmetry, postural integrity, and dynamic balance at levels that would impress even trained athletes. Researchers who've been allowed limited, respectful access to the community describe an invisible gym in plain sight. Every element of the Amish lifestyle, from household chores to religious rituals, activates the legs. Men work on uneven terrain, pushing plows, hammering barn beams, climbing grain silos. Women haul wet laundry to clotheslines even in winter, kneel in gardens, and carry water across fields. Children are expected to walk to school regardless of weather, often 2 to 3 miles each way. By adulthood, walking is not an activity, but a baseline. Amish homes are almost universally built without carpeting or insulation under flooring. This means cold, hard surfaces underfoot, requiring constant micro-adjustments from the lower leg and foot muscles. Stairs are steep, often creaking and narrow, built without the ergonomic comforts of suburban construction. And yet, even in their 80s and 90s, Amish elders navigate them daily without hesitation. This leg vitality isn't about superhuman genetics. In fact, outside their lifestyle, the Amish are genetically similar to their non-Amish neighbors. The difference lies in the motion they never stopped doing. Their lifestyle demands continual load-bearing activity, often with awkward, shifting weights like firewood, hay bales, or milk buckets, the kind of training that modern gyms try to replicate with sandbags and sled pushes. But for the Amish, it's simply life. The effects show in subtle but powerful ways. Elders who stand up from kneeling in the garden without a grunt. 80-year-olds who walk 5 miles to church every Sunday. Midwives in their 70s attending births up a narrow flight of stairs. Their strength is silent, but everywhere. And as the morning haze burns off over the cornfields, Amos Lapp is already halfway through his daily loop. No gym required. By the time the sun crests the silos at 6:45 a.m., the Lapp household has already been active for more than 2 hours. The scent of wood smoke and fresh straw drifts from open barn doors. Inside, the rhythm of the day has taken hold, a rhythm unchanged for generations. A kerosene lantern casts a golden glow over the kitchen table where Eliza, Amos's 68-year-old daughter-in-law, is churning butter by hand, her arms flexing in fluid arcs. On the stove, rolled oats bubble in goat's milk. Nearby, a teenage grandson is lacing up his boots, preparing for the mile-and-a-half walk to the one-room schoolhouse where he'll arrive before the bell. For the Amish, movement is built into every layer of the morning routine. There are no garages or driveways to shortcut mobility. No microwaves or automatic coffee makers to minimize time on one's feet. Instead, breakfast is earned, through labor, through repetition, and through distance. The children carry baskets of eggs from the coop to the kitchen. Men rotate cows between pastures by foot, not ATV. Women walk buckets of feed to rabbits and chickens, the icy handles pressing against their palms. The walk to school is not a punishment, but a rite of passage. Boys and girls, some as young as 6, form silent caravans along gravel lanes and snow-dusted trails. With no headphones, no phones, and no distractions, their strides are purposeful, their balance tuned by terrain. In warmer months, most go barefoot, strengthening their foot arches, ankles, and calves against the irregular earth. It's an unspoken discipline, one that primes the body from an early age to adapt, stabilize, and endure. Meanwhile, in the fields, Amos is already behind a team of Belgian draft horses, steering them through rows of dew-covered cabbage. Every step demands coordination. His boots sink slightly with each push forward, working against the softness of the soil. A misstep could twist an ankle or disrupt the furrow, but Amos moves with the confidence of decades. He's not alone. Along the adjoining fields, his sons and grandsons mimic the same motions, dragging rakes, adjusting harnesses, all on foot. It's not rare for these men to clock 10 miles before breakfast, each one functional, each one necessary. Inside the barn, staircases to lofts hold another layer of ritual. Feed must be carried up. Hay bales must be brought down. Each ascent is unassisted. No lifts, no pulleys, just quadriceps and resolve. For the elders, including Amos, this vertical movement is essential. It keeps joints warm, reflexes sharp, and balance intact. The young do it because it's required. The old do it because it's what keeps them young. By 8:30 a.m., the modern world is just waking up. But here, the first act of the day, composed entirely of walking, hauling, climbing, and carrying, is nearly complete. And as Amos sits down for his second cup of black coffee, his boots are already muddy, his calves warmed by 3 miles of movement, and his legs just getting started. From a distance, Lancaster County looks pastoral, a quilt of green fields stitched together by dirt lanes and shaded creeks. But to the Amish, this landscape is no backdrop. It is an unrelenting training ground. Every step across it is a micro-adjustment, a resistance test, a lesson in proprioception. And for elders like Amos Lapp, it is the terrain, not machines or routines, that sculpts and maintains leg strength far beyond what modern norms predict. Start with the fields. Amish farms are rarely flat. Most are arranged along gentle hills or uneven stretches where drainage and sunlight dictate planting patterns. When Amos walks rows of tobacco or sweet corn, he's navigating soft loam that clings to his boots and absorbs every footfall. Each step is heavier than the last, drawing on his hamstrings and calves to lift clear of the muck. This variable resistance, especially when hauling tools or produce, mimics what modern trainers call functional instability. But for Amos, it's just Wednesday. Then there are the slopes. Many barns are perched at the tops of ridges, with paths carved by generations of footsteps rather than design. In summer, they're dusty and uneven. In winter, they're treacherous. The incline behind Amos's barn reaches a 12% grade, enough to require conscious foot placement on frost-laced mornings. Walking it daily becomes its own kind of training, descending with careful heel strikes, ascending with glute drive and balance. No handrails. No salt. Just patience and repetition. The trails that thread between fields and homes are strewn with gravel, often ungraded and peppered with sinkholes after storms. These irregular surfaces constantly test ankle stability and lower leg endurance. For children, they're a place to race. For adults, they're a reminder that each step must be felt, not just taken. Even minor trips could lead to days of downtime, something no farmer, young or old, can afford during harvest. Winter sharpens every edge. Snow blankets the world in deceptive softness, hiding ice patches and deep divots. Yet Amos, like many of his peers, never misses a step. He doesn't shuffle. He adapts, widening his stance slightly, bending his knees, using his walking staff as both balance aid and traction probe. In these months, each journey to the barn becomes a slow-motion strength test. Cold stiffens muscles. Slippery ground eliminates margin for error. And still, the tasks go on. What outsiders might see as inconvenience, the lack of paved paths, railings, or vehicles, is, for the Amish, the very reason leg integrity persists. Their environment demands engagement. Their bodies respond by becoming precise, resilient, and capable. And as Amos finishes a loop past the barn and back to the house, his breath visible in the cold air, it's clear the terrain has done its job, shaped strength not through excess, but necessity. In most modern communities, aging comes hand in hand with mobility decline. Falls are a leading cause of injury among the elderly, prompting a billion-dollar industry of handrails, alert bracelets, and balance trainers. But here in Lancaster County, where the nearest hospital may be miles away and modern interventions are rare, Amish elders like Amos lap walk confidently into their 90s, with almost no assistance and almost no incidents. Studies by researchers granted limited observational access have revealed a striking anomaly. The fall rate among the Old-Order Amish elderly is less than half the national average. Among those over 80, recorded instances of hospitalization due to falls remain exceedingly rare. Even more remarkable, few elders use canes or walkers. Most rely on wooden staffs, not for support, but for rhythm and tactile feedback from the ground. The staff becomes an extension of the body, not a crutch. In community interviews, elders describe falls not as inevitable, but as avoidable with presence of mind and steady legs. This resilience isn't the result of advanced medicine. It's the absence of disuse. In mainstream settings, mobility often declines because it becomes optional. Elevators replace stairs. Delivery replaces walking. The body, freed from effort, softens. But in Amish life, the reverse is true. Movement remains required for survival and community participation. There are no fall prevention classes, because the daily lifestyle is fall prevention. Elders don't retire into inactivity. They age into adjusted roles that still demand strength. Amos, now past 90, no longer hoists hay bales into the loft. But he hauls smaller loads from the smokehouse, maintains fence posts, and tills a half-acre kitchen garden every spring. These tasks keep him moving, bending, stabilizing, all of which protect against the dangerous spiral of sedentary weakening. Footwear also plays a subtle but vital role. Amish boots and shoes are simple, often handmade, with minimal cushioning and flat soles. Unlike modern shoes that soften impact and isolate foot muscles, Amish footwear demands engagement. To walk on gravel or ice in them is to constantly train the intrinsic muscles of the foot, ankle, and lower leg. Over decades, this preserves both strength and sensory feedback, two pillars of balance that erode quickly in sedentary lives. Even the design of Amish homes reinforces mobility. There are no elevators or ramps. Bedrooms are often upstairs. Toilets, wash basins, and storage are placed for practicality, not ergonomic ease. Climbing, kneeling, stooping, all persist into old age because the environment requires it. And unlike in many nursing homes, there is no culture of fear around movement. If you can walk, you do. If you can climb, you do. If you can't, someone quietly helps you until you can again. In a world where aging often signals limitation, the Amish approach it as a continuation of motion. The body is seen not as fragile, but adaptable. As Amos says, if you walk the earth every day, it holds you up in return. And as he reaches for his staff and prepares to check the maple taps across the far field, his steps show no hesitation, just the quiet certainty of legs that have never forgotten their purpose. It stands taller than most canes, sanded smooth from years of calloused grip, its base darkened from constant contact with earth, stone, and snow. To an outsider, it may look like a symbol of age. But to Amos Lapp and other Old-Order Amish elders, the wooden walking staff is something far more functional. A tool of balance, a trainer of reflexes, and a lifelong companion that turns every walk into a full-body engagement. Amos carved his own decades ago from a sapling of white ash growing near his pasture. He selected it not for aesthetics, but for resilience. White ash is prized in Amish communities for its balance of flexibility and strength. The same would traditionally use to make tool handles, wagon frames, and baseball bats. Over time, the staff absorbed his habits. Its top is grooved where his hand rests naturally. Its weight is perfectly matched to his stride. It is not a crutch, but an extension of his body. Unlike the standardized walkers and rubber-tipped canes found in modern care facilities, the Amish staff is deeply personal. Some are adorned with carved initials or wrapped with bits of rawhide. Others are notched to measure years or journeys. But all serve the same hidden purpose, training the body to read the ground. When Amos crosses ice-crusted slopes or uneven rows in his garden, his staff probes ahead, providing tactile feedback before his foot commits. This anticipatory engagement strengthens his ankle reflexes and enhances proprioception, the sense of body position in space. The use of the staff also encourages posture alignment. Held upright and slightly ahead, it naturally keeps the spine extended and shoulders back. Unlike a cane, which leans into the body and can promote hunching, the staff promotes verticality. It also enables counterbalance. On descents, Amos plants it downhill first, absorbing impact through his upper arm and sparing his knees. On climbs, he uses it to pull upward, adding a low-grade resistance component to every ascent. The rhythm of its use matters too. Amish elders walk with a deliberate cadence, syncing the staff strike with the opposite foot. This coordination engages the core and stabilizes the gait, much like the gait training regimens prescribed in modern physical therapy. But here, it's organic, learned from childhood and refined over decades. There are no lessons, just imitation. Young boys watch their grandfathers, copy their stance, and someday carve staffs of their own. In winter, when visibility is poor and the wind bites through wool coats, the staff becomes even more critical. Amos wraps a leather loop around his wrist to keep it anchored. Each step on frozen ground becomes a small act of negotiation between the body, the tool, and the earth. In these moments, the staff is not just support, it's survival. And perhaps most telling, even younger Amish, men in their 30s and 40s, will occasionally carry staffs when making long walks between districts or hauling loads across hilly terrain. It's not an admission of weakness but a nod to efficiency. In a world stripped of unnecessary gear, the staff remains, not as decoration, but because it works. As Amos often says with a quiet smile, the legs keep you moving, but the stick keeps you sure. As the first crack of an axe echoes through the early light, The woodlot behind Amos Lapp's barn becomes a training ground disguised as routine. Here, among split logs and stacked cords, age does not grant exemption, only adaptation. While younger men fell trees deeper in the grove, elders like Amos take up a task that seems humble but proves deceivingly taxing: hauling cut wood from the forest's edge to the woodshed, one wheelbarrow at a time. It begins with bending. Unlike mechanical log splitters, the Amish rely on manual mauls and wedges, which leave irregular, heavy cuts that require precision to lift. Amos crouches, not with a rounded spine, but with a deep knee bend, thighs parallel to the ground, heels flat. His back remains straight as he grips the first log, using his hips and hamstrings to drive upward. It's a motion familiar to powerlifters, yet here it's embedded in necessity. He repeats it a dozen times in a row, never rushing, never pausing. Each trip to the woodshed covers about 200 feet across uneven terrain. The path dips once into a low trough where water pools after rain, then climbs steadily past a row of maple trees. Pushing a wheelbarrow full of damp hardwood over this stretch requires recruitment of every leg muscle. Quadriceps fire to drive forward, calves stabilize the ankles against rocks, and glutes contract to support the uphill push. For Amos, now in his 90s, it's not just a chore, it's maintenance. Movement that strengthens the same joints so many modern seniors are told to protect through rest. He insists on doing it himself. Offers of help are kindly refused, not from pride but purpose. "If I stop doing the hard things," he once told a visiting neighbor, "my legs will forget." That ethos is widespread among the Amish elders. They don't view physical labor as something to avoid with age. They see it as the very thing that makes aging viable. In winter, the wood becomes heavier with moisture. The loads are slick, the wheelbarrow wheels stick in the frozen ground, and the incline to the shed ice is over. Still, Amos rises early to beat the thaw, planting his boots wide and his pace slow. Each round trip takes about 7 minutes, and he does 10 before breakfast. That's 70 minutes of load-bearing legwork with variable resistance, terrain changes, and constant balance adjustments. No repetitions are identical. No muscles rest completely. The return walk, with the wheelbarrow empty, is no break. It becomes a recovery stride, a chance for joints to reset, posture to realign. Amos often whistles or prays quietly on this leg of the trip, but his legs remain engaged. His feet feel every dip and rise. His staff, often hung over the wheelbarrow handle while pushing, returns to his hand for descent. Over the course of a week, Amos moves more wood than some homeowners burn in a month. Not because he must. His sons could take over in a heartbeat, but because this ritual, repeated daily through seasons and decades, has built legs that never needed artificial support. And as the last log is stacked and the barn door swings closed, his breath steady in the cold air, it's clear the greatest gym in Lancaster County is one without mirrors, timers, or machines. Just a man, a wheelbarrow, and the stubborn strength of his legs. In the quiet order of Amish life, where humility is prized and pride quietly discouraged, competition wears a different face. There are no races, no trophies, and no overt tests of strength. But in the shade of barns and the edge of harvest fields, a silent game unfolds, one based not on speed alone, but on endurance, efficiency, and the power of legs that have spent decades in motion. Among the elders, wagon loading has become an unspoken proving ground. It starts at dawn during harvest season. Wagons line up at the edge of cornfields, tobacco plots, or firewood stacks. Each one must be filled by hand, lifted and arranged with precision. While younger men haul in quick bursts, sprinting between rows and wagons, the elders adopt a different rhythm. Slow, deliberate, continuous. Amos Lapp, nearing his mid-90s, doesn't attempt to outpace his grandsons, but by midday, he's often loaded more than anyone else. Not through speed, but through refusal to stop. Observers from within the community note this dynamic with quiet respect. There is no boasting, no tallying out loud, but glances are exchanged. A son notices his father's load is neater, stacked tighter, filled higher. A neighbor's pause to rest is matched by an elder's subtle shift to a second wagon. The unspoken message, strength persists, and those who've worked the longest still lead by example. This competition is deeply tied to leg stamina. Loading wagons isn't just about lifting. It's about sustained walking, bending, and navigating shifting terrain. Each bundle of corn or tobacco must be carried dozens of feet, often through mud or angled slopes, then hoisted onto the wagon bed. Elders like Amos rely on a strong hip hinge and a deep squat, rising with a full load and pivoting without strain. Their steps are sure, their balance honed. Fatigue is managed not with rest, but with pacing. The wagons themselves are a kind of scoreboard. By late morning, they stand lined up, each filled by a different pair or individual. The density of the stacks, the evenness of the layers, the lack of waste, all quietly assessed. Elders don't claim victory, but the younger generation often notices whose wagon is fullest, whose bundles are most tightly bound. Respect is earned not with words, but with output. This quiet rivalry extends beyond the harvest. During barn raisings, woodcutting events, or spring planting, elders choose the most challenging tasks, not to dominate, but to show they still can. Amos, for instance, prefers the uphill sections of his field when hauling compost. "The legs don't know easy," he once said. "They only know used or unused." Even in winter, when hauling shifts from crops to firewood or hay, the pattern continues. Elders take longer routes to the shed, often through harder terrain. They load more per trip, refuse help, and keep moving even as the cold stiffens joints. It's not ego, it's a quiet kind of stewardship. By demonstrating what a well-used body can still achieve, they pass on the expectation of resilience. In a culture where youth often idolizes modern shortcuts, the Amish show that power can be subtle. It doesn't need applause to exist. And in the measured, confident steps of a 94-year-old man beside his stacked wagon, there is more than endurance. There is legacy in motion. Amos remembers falls, not his own, but those of others. Years ago, a neighbor lost balance carrying a heavy yoke of water and dislocated a shoulder on the frozen slope. The injury kept him from the spring planting, and Amos never forgot the look of frustration, not pain, on the man's face. From that winter forward, Amos adjusted. He lengthened his walking staff by 4 inches and changed his boot treads. He taught his grandchildren to test the earth with each step and to keep their knees soft in the cold. In this world, slipping is never just bad luck. It's a lesson paid forward. The terrain may change, but the Amish change with it. Modern researchers, intrigued by the anomaly of Amish aging, quietly enter the picture. With permission from select families, they attach motion trackers and accelerometers to garments, discrete devices tucked into vests and bonnets. What they find is staggering. Even in deep winter, Amish elders average over 15,000 steps per day. In summer, it rises beyond 18,000. And these aren't soft treadmill strides. They include hill climbs, gravel balance corrections, and load-bearing treks across rough terrain. A 72-year-old woman hauling 2 milk jugs up a slope shows leg engagement equivalent to a weighted stair climber. A 90-year-old man chopping ice for water troughs engages stabilizer muscles researchers didn't expect to see firing at his age. For every myth of decline, there's a living counterexample. In wool, in leather boots, in quiet motion before dawn. There are no gym machines in Lancaster barns, yet every day mirrors a circuit workout. Instead of metal weights, there are 50-pound feed sacks. Instead of stair machines, steep ladders into haylofts. Instead of elliptical trainers, long treks behind oxen or through muddy fields. The resistance is real, but functional. Each movement aligns with purpose. Feeding livestock, chopping wood, drawing water, carrying grandchildren. Even simple tasks, like hanging wet quilts on the outdoor line, engage full-body stabilization as arms extend and legs anchor against the wind. Elders don't warm up before these routines. The routines are the warm-up. There are no reps, only repetitions of life. And in those repetitions, strength takes shape without fanfare. One biomechanical study, reviewed by a team of orthopedists, reveals something unexpected. Dorsiflexion, the upward flexing motion of the foot, remains impressively strong among Amish elders. Unlike sedentary seniors, They retain near full range of ankle motion, allowing them to walk on uneven ground without tripping. Proprioception, the body's internal sense of position, is also superior. In balance tests, many Amish elders can hold one-legged stances on dirt for over 45 seconds, often with eyes closed. The conclusion: movement preserved not only muscle mass, but nerve communication. In a society where elders keep moving because life demands it, the nervous system never forgets how to respond. The lesson is simple: stop moving, and your legs forget how to balance. Keep moving, and they remember for a lifetime. But even here, risk is real. One bitter morning, during sleigh hauling, 87-year-old Eli Stoltzfus slips on compacted snow, twisting his hip under a pile of frozen logs. The community reacts instantly, not with panic, but with purpose. Elders take turns tending his animals. Younger men adjust his fence lines. For weeks, Eli walks only with assistance. The incident spreads quiet alarm, not because falls are common, but because they're so rare. It reminds everyone how high the stakes are when strength falters. And in the evenings around oil-lit tables, families ask the same question: how do we prevent the next one? From that question, something unexpected resurfaces: a nearly forgotten winter game once played by boys behind barns. Known simply as the heel drag push, it involves two opponents, each gripping a pole, dragging their heels across icy ground while pushing against each other's strength. The motion trains thigh engagement, ankle rigidity, and lateral stability. Exactly what's needed for winter traction. Elders recall the game from their youth and begin reviving it, not as competition, but as prevention. Children embrace it instantly. Laughter rings through the cold air. Legs burn. Balance returns, not through therapy, but play. By January, the game becomes a morning ritual in some districts. Boys and girls pair off before school. Fathers join sons after chores. Even elders, robes flapping in the wind, take turns in the push. Amos participates, grinning, shoulders hunched in joy. The simplicity of the motion belies its benefit. Within weeks, balance improves. Slips decrease. The game spills into barns, kitchens, even churchyards. What began as a memory becomes a daily routine. And in this intergenerational practice, the community gains more than physical strength. It regains a form of cultural exercise, a shared tool for resilience that no gym could invent. By spring, injury rates drop across 3 settlements. Word spreads informally, not in publications, but in past notes and shared hymns. The revival of movement as culture, not chore, strengthens more than just muscles. Children walk straighter. Elders stand longer. During house visits, researchers note marked gains in lateral stability and stride length among elders. And all of it stems from a practice with no cost, no coach, no brand. Just ground, effort, and connection. Strength, rediscovered, stays where it belongs. In the legs, in the habits, in the soil. Then comes the true test: spring plowing. The land, thawing and muddy, pulls at boots like wet concrete. Horses strain against the yokes, and behind them, Amos walks. No saddle, no seat, just footwork. Each pass down the row means stabilizing against deep furrows, redirecting the plow by force of hip and leg. His calves flex. His thighs burn. But he keeps pace. 4 hours. This is no symbolic gesture. It's the hardest job in the field, one that many men half his age avoid. But Amos walks it again and again, until the final row is turned and the land, like him, is ready. By early summer, Amos is seen harvesting barefoot, straw hat low, calves corded with definition, walking the perimeter of the field to gather fallen husks. His legs are wiry, lean, precise. He bends, squats, carries, rises, each movement unbroken. Teenagers pause to watch him, whispering disbelief. At 94, he works without pause, stronger than many athletes, more durable than men half his weight. There's no bravado in it, only the deep rhythm of a man who never stopped using what others long ago gave up. He doesn't measure progress in pounds lifted, but in tasks done, and days ended upright. The research reaches publication. Peer-reviewed journals hail the Amish model as a window into naturalized aging through embedded movement. Biologists debate whether lifestyle is more powerful than medicine. Physical therapists begin recommending terrain walking and uneven ground exposure. The media takes brief notice, fascinated by the idea that old-fashioned living could rival modern science. Yet for all the studies, charts, and conference buzz, the source remains quiet, unchanged. The people whose legs inspired it all are out in the fields, walking. Back in Lancaster, the day ends as it began, with motion. Children race home from school. Mothers carry baskets uphill. Amos walks the same half-mile path he walked 70 years ago, his staff tapping rhythm against the earth. No one here reads the new study. They don't need to. Their proof is lived. Their strength is walked into the ground. And tomorrow, as dawn breaks and the milk pails are lifted once more, the legacy continues, step by step, leg by leg, age defied not by miracle, but by motion.